Passenger pigeon, a bird that went extinct in 1914, was once the most common bird in North America. And this speech is about that, how they acted in their environment, what happened to them, why are they extinct, and what are scientists doing to combat the effects of their extinction. Personally, I love passenger pigeons. I think they are one of the coolest animals of all time. They're so interesting. I've spent many nights just researching them. And my sources I agree with me, having multiple people in here that have written entire books on the subject of passenger pigeons. One of the most noteworthy features of passenger pigeons is their huge, huge flocks that would just blot out the sun as they flew overhead. Just it would like denser than clouds. They would be dark shadows underneath them, with the many people estimating that the total population of them was 50 billion. And these birds were really only in the US, so these were very densely concentrated. So a flock could maybe even a big flock could have a few million birds in one flock, which is huge compared to most other birds. And with these huge sizes, when they would come to roost or land for the night, they would land on small trees and break them just by just the weight of how many birds were on them. And according to a study done by Joshua W. Ellsworth and Brenda McComan for the University of Massachusetts, these birds were abundant enough to have played a major role in the evolution of oak trees. For example, because of the huge shadows that their flocks would make when they were flying overhead, and just the longevity of those shadows, since the birds would be coming from one horizon and going to the other, you would not see either end, helped made it so oak trees had to become more shade tolerant so that they wouldn't die if for multiple days there were just pigeons over them. Another thing with the pigeons and the oak trees is that when the pigeons would land, of course they would poop everywhere, right? They would poop everywhere. So there would just be, which is a huge fire hazard. So the trees had to become more fire resistant in order to not be so burnable whenever pigeons flew overhead. And with that kind of poop problem, that is sort of part of the reason why they're gone. Humans saw them as pests due to the amount of droppings they would leave on our farms and our houses. And oftentimes they were just kind of seen as cheap food for poor people. And according to Joel Greenberg's book, A Feathered River Across the Sky, The Passenger Pigeon's Flight to Extinction, there were a couple ways in which hunters primarily killed the birds. First of all, shotguns. They would just the hunters would look up at the sky, see that huge flock of birds, point the rifle, 60 birds fall down, one shot, which is crazy that just one shot would get 60 birds, and the flocks would still stay huge for a little bit until they went extinct. And then another method they used were nets, and they could just, if they got enough power, they could throw nets up on them, and they could catch up to 800 birds with one net. That's a lot of birds. And this also consequently made them very cheap, which kind of further pushed the point of them just kind of being cheap food that isn't it's not great. We don't really want it. It's just they're nuisances. And a third way they did it is when the birds would land, they would nest in trees, like probably 20 nests in a single tree. So hunters would just go in there with an axe and just chop down The tree is killing, however many birds were in there, like 20, maybe 30. And due to this, and all of this hunting eventually drove them to extinction, unfortunately. And then, but now, because of this loss, of course, a lot of the ecosystems are at risk, because the passenger pigeon was a keystone species, meaning it played a really important role in most ecosystems they would fly over and land in. So what scientists are doing is they're trying to bring them back, but of course they can't just bring it back. So as Ben Novak eloquently puts it, it's really not about trying to restore the past. It's about confronting our present and future. So what he means by that is we're not really ever going to get probably the same numbers or the same bird, really, even, since the main method we're trying to get them back is by using stem cells harvested from the few passenger pigeon corpses we still have, and using them to make seeds to put into band-tailed pigeons, like that. So what we would do is impregnate a band-tailed pigeon with a passenger pigeon stem cell, making it so it was pregnant with like a hybrid of band-tailed pigeon and passenger pigeon, making them, like halfway between. So we would start off small, releasing kind of small flocks of these passenger pigeons, and seeing how they do. And if they do well, we'd continue kind of be making more of them to put out there to make the flocks bigger, trying to get a similar size. And to help with the flocking behavior, instead of using the banded pigeons, we are going to be putting the passenger pigeons in flocks of homing pigeons, which had similar routes of migration to passenger pigeons, as well as just a similar flocking style where they have a lot of them. Of course, not to the extreme numbers passenger pigeons had, but similar, so that the passenger pigeons can kind of get a feel for what they're supposed to be doing. Which hopefully, in the end of that, we can get a flock or two of passenger pigeons, not real ones, flying around in the wild, and hopefully we won't have to really protect them unless black market things happen. But now that I've gone over their behavior and their environment, what happened to them, and what we are currently doing about it, I just want to say a few more things. I think that it would be so wonderful to be able to see that in my lifetime. I don't think it's going to be coming soon, getting a whole flock of them, but the technology is there to have them. So I hope that by the time I'm maybe 60, I'm able to look out my window and see a feathered river across the sky. In hopes, I really want that. But remember, even if we do get that beautiful belt of feathers, those birds aren't the same birds. They will never be the same birds. They're not going to act the same. They won't be the same. They won't do the same things. They'll probably never reach that 50 billion number again. So what Ben Novak says is, we're not creating the exact same passenger pigeon from 1874. So we'll never get them back, but we can try our best to bring them back.